everyone! I wanted to make a video about clarinet and sax doubling since I've been getting a lot of questions about it. Specifically, what kind of exercises can you do to go between the doubles, and also how you can just be really proficient at both. So for me, the number one most important thing is sound. That makes you a successful doubler. So unless you have a good sound on both instruments, I feel like the technique is secondary after getting the sound and the embouchure concept happening. So I'm just going to demonstrate some of the exercises I do and then some common problems that some of my students have. So I started on clarinet when I was young and then switched to the saxophone, and I think that's generally a little bit easier to do. I think going from clarinet and sax is a little bit easier than going from sax to clarinet. So here's my clarinet. So I'm just going to play a little scale so we can all listen to what's hopefully a nice, good, round clarinet sound. So I'm just going to play my C major. Okay, so first thing, clarinet embouchure, and this will especially be helpful if you're coming from saxophone. So for me, clarinet embouchure, the way I've been taught, is more of an in the back of the throat. So I'm thinking and it's cold air. That's really important. So I'm thinking, I'm hissing he. That's what I learned from my professors. So and then hissing he, cold air. Saxophone is more of an ah, so it's a little bit more open in the throat, and the air is moving a little bit slower. So if you're sounding a little bit funky on the clarinet, it's probably to do with your air speed or your throat position. So number one, that's what you want to check, is those things. Also, the embouchure of clarinet is a little bit tighter than saxophone. It's two different embouchures. So I always have my students make a clarinet face. So for me, I just kind of make my face like this. I think lips over the bottom teeth, corners here. Okay, and then I'm going to put my clarinet in, and then I'm going to try to bring the corners in a little bit. Okay. So it's kind of like a drawstring purse kind of embouchure closing around the clarinet. What I usually see is the corners are too loose and they're leaking air. You can see how but for saxophone the corners are a little bit more down, especially with jazz. So my corners are a little bit higher up than they are in saxophone on the clarinet. And then just do some long tones. So whatever scales you know, if you just know a few notes, play that. Whole notes, do that for 5-10 minutes a day, and that's going to totally just benefit your playing more than a lot of other things could. So like I just did a C major scale, I do that slow and whole note. What you can also practice is register key exercises. So you can start on like your low G here, and then pop the register key to get a D. Again, go up chromatically. So those are definitely some exercises you can do. Oh, and when you're going up, when you're pressing the register key, if that note sounds flat or it's not coming out right away, that means your throat position's too low. So that's one exercise I do. So I hope that helps for clarinet and kind of developing some warm-up routines based on that. Especially that octave key exercise, because usually what happens on clarinet is the high notes get kind of spread and a little pushy sounding. So that exercise will really help. Okay, for the saxophone. Okay, so saxophone. So talking about coming from the saxophone from a clarinet perspective, especially for playing jazz, is going to be a lot looser embouchure. So usually the common problem I see is the corners are too tight up here. There's not enough, the throat position is not open enough, so it's not creating resonance. So you're getting a pinched, closed off sound. So you want a nice big open sound on the saxophone. Sometimes what I hear in students is this will be kind of pinched and we're not getting a lot of resonance. hopefully you could hear how that sounded a little bit thinner. So what you want to do is definitely practice in a mirror. As you can see, your corners are a little bit more down, and you're thinking ah in the throat. What you can also do, so for jazz, I do have a little bit more bottom lip out, like kind of forward when I'm playing. It gives me a little bit more edge in my sound. If you're doing classical, you might want to tuck a little bit of that more in. And also, just being aware of how much mouthpiece you're taking. You want to be make sure you're taking enough mouthpiece. Yeah, so that's usually what I do. I do long tones on the saxophone, like C major scale. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll start in the middle, maybe like on my middle C on the saxophone, and then I'll go down. I'll go all the way down to middle C, and then I'll go up in my high range. So what you want to pay attention to is usually what can happen is those high notes can get a little shrill or pinched sounding. So you want to think of keeping those open and making sure that the pitch stays steady and you're not biting up here or closing off the throat so that you can get those nice. I'm probably even going to do those a little bit more. So that's some tips for saxophone you can do. There's also some overtone exercises that if anyone's interested in, I can demonstrate in a further video. So using the bottom notes, the lower notes of the saxophone to create an overtone series. But that's the basics of it. So making sure that you're doing some long tones for warm-ups. So sound and embouchure is the foremost thing. And then I could also make some videos talking about the different fingerings and maybe some different techniques if anyone's interested in that. So hopefully that helps your practice session and getting going on your doubles.